This episode of Twin Cities Trekkies is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor before, let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that help you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. They'll also help you to distribute your podcast so it can be heard on many different platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's all you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Everyone, welcome to episode 10 of Twin Cities Trekkies. I am Wes.
And I'm Kenzie.
And today we're ranking all 13 Star Trek films from our favorite to our least favorite. Or if you want to, or Kenzie, if you want to go least favorite to favorite, I don't care.
Yeah, or no one. There's a few that I'm not super familiar with, like seen once, or there's actually one from the original series movies of the first 6 that I haven't actually even seen. So
I guess we'll find out, won't we? Yeah. So to get in touch with us is email address is tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at tctrekkiespod. You can find us both there. It's pretty easy to find. Same thing like that. And we're available on every podcast platform you can think of, from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, YouTube. If you want to watch a YouTube video of our podcast, you definitely can. Just leave us feedback if you wish. Just keep in mind that any feedback you do leave may be featured in a future episode of Twin Cities Trekkies. Just be aware. All right, so I think we should start ranking these films. Are you good? I'm gonna go from favorite to least favorite, but if you want to go least favorite to favorite, it's fine with me. So,
oh gosh, I don't even know how to start.
Yeah,
I think we should kind of go through, kind of chunk them out. We can do a little overview of, all of the different movies, and then how we're kind of categorizing and grouping them.
Yeah,
and then
kind
of pick it out through there.
Yeah, I mean, we could go in order and say we say we go in order and we go if we don't like it, we like it. If we don't like it, we like it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think we just kind of go through and just quickly note something about that or our interaction with it. Then we can kind of both list off our top 3, top 5, top 13. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's start with the very first one, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. This movie is about like a brief synopsis about each one. This is the one with V'ger. This is the one with the big giant cloud, and they find out it's a big giant Voyager probe that was sent back over 300 years ago, apparently, and went through a black hole and wound up at a machine planet and was returning to Earth to complete its transmission of all the alien races it encountered. That kind of thing. So, I am not a big fan of this film. I am not. It's very slow. It's very boring. There's only 2 scenes that I enjoy out of the entire film. I mean, I love the score. First of all, I love Jerry Goldsmith's score for the motion picture. I love it to death. It's a very good soundtrack. But there's only 2
operatic, theatrical.
Yes. And it's I think they were trying to do a version of 2001, A Space Odyssey, and that's pretty much what the motion picture is pretty much Star Trek's version of 2001. So, but that's a classic. That's a classic science fiction film. I mean, I've seen 2001. I like it, but there's only two scenes. First of all, the wormhole scene when they go to warp for the first time and end up in a wormhole. I think that's visually stunning and stuff like that. And from what I understand, it was scanned laser beams. So how they created that wormhole was scanned laser beams over and over and over. So I like that. I like how the speech slows down and they talk like this. Photon torpedoes. I like that, and I also like when Spock goes to that memory wall, and and he makes all the reports and say like, okay, we're inside a living machine here, Captain, that kind of thing, and he tries to mind meld with that thing, and he flies back, and the whole sequence is stunning, visually stunning, stuff like that. So I personally don't like the motion picture. I don't. I said, it's boring, it's slow, and I mean it's good in spots, but a lot of slowness for me. It's nicknamed the slow motion picture, and it's the truth.
Yeah, it does. It feels that's what I wanted to bring up was that it's very the slow motion picture because it feels very theatrical and slow and big, and it's a cool way to jump into the movies, I guess, given the time period. But it definitely feels very Space Odyssey vibes.
Yeah, definitely, and it is definitely visually stunning. I'll give you that. I mean. But it is very slow, and it's not my favorite. If I would rank the movies, I would put the motion picture either right at the bottom or the one above that. So one or two at the very bottom. So, and it's nothing personal. If you like the motion picture, let us know. It's fine if you do. Yeah. There's no right.
It's completely subjective. Yeah.
This is our opinions about how we feel about these films. So, if you like the motion picture, great. And it's fine, But if you don't and you agree with us, that's fine too. It's purely subjective. It's all our opinions, and it's only
totally subjective to what we're thinking. So
it is no really reflection of anybody else but our own.
Yep.
All right, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. This is the one with Khan, folks. The first of two with Khan. First of two with Khan. But this is the one that most people like, and it's the one with Khan is up for revenge, and do everything to kill Kirk in any way, shape, or form. A sequel to Space Seed, folks, the big budget Space Seed sequel.
Which I really like Wrath of Khan, but later in my top three, I actually personally prefer Into Darkness because just given I like the Kelvin timeline, so that is my personal opinion for going on the Khan series. I definitely really like Into Darkness over Wrath of Khan, but Wrath of Khan is where it all started.
Yeah,
and it's an amazing movie.
Yes,
and you have just really iconic scene with Spock and Kirk, and it's just it's a tear wrenching. So, I also love that movie a lot too.
Yep. I love the whole film through and through. It's very engaging. It's very, very great character moments for especially for Kirk and Spock. And stuff like that. But I really enjoyed the film through and through. Especially the whole Mutara Nebula sequence, it's visually stunning even today. And I love the director's cut of Wrath of Khan, which was the version that aired on ABC when it was first broadcast on television. So it has special scenes in there that weren't in the theatrical film, like Sky's nephew, Peter Preston, that kind of thing. So it's kind of. I love the whole thing. I love the visual effects. I even love the score. James Horner's score for The Wrath of Khan is actually in my top 3 soundtracks of Star Trek of all time. Because I love his. Awesome. The soundtrack for Wrath of Khan is just great. I mean, he was only 29 when he did that. So he was very young when he did that score. So I mean, it's really interesting. You had a first-time director, Nicholas Meyer, who went on to write Star Trek 4 and direct Star Trek 6. But it's great film. I love it. So I love it. So it's in my top 5 for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to know if this is the one. So that's the next one, Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. And this is the direct sequel to Wrath of Khan. Takes place right after.
Leaves on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, and it wasn't intended to be that way either. Yeah. When they made Wrath of Khan, they did no intentions of making a third film. But then, based on audience testing and stuff like that, to the death of Spock and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, the whole controversy. I wish I was around back then.
I wish so too, because I would have freaked out. When just watching Wrath of Khan and then seeing how it ended, it's like, that's really sad, and I'm upset. And I mean, it's like, it's honorable, but it's like, man, that's really sad, and so then seeing like, oh, thank God, Search for Spock exists. And it's like, and then you remember and you're relieved. You're like, oh yeah, that made.
Yeah, it's like, when they were making Star Trek 2, they had no intentions of making a third film. I mean, because they're like, okay, we need to recoup our losses. Let's make another movie just to recoup our losses from the motion picture, which actually had an inflated budget. But they had no intentions. But the whole cast and crew, they enjoyed making the film, and but we had no idea it was gonna be. They had no idea it was gonna make a third film, because after test audiences had responded very negatively to the death of Spock. I mean, how it was first screened to the test audiences. They had to put a hope for the future kind of vibe in the end and stuff like that. And that's why we got that. I mean, it was not intended to do that, but they did anyway. So, and stuff like that. So, but back to Star Trek 3, I like this film. This is where they find Spock back alive thanks to the Genesis planet, regenerated, and
also hear about a little bit of the ceremonies around what it means to die in Vulcan culture, and learning about like what it means to lay Spock to rest. And that's the only reason why we start looking for Spock, because they're like, hey, we need all this stuff to lay him to rest. Come on, like our son died, so.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, and we got to learn a little bit more of Vulcan culture in that film, especially the whole Katra thing, and the way that, where's the logic of not being right home, you idiot?
And that's like, I mean, that's what starts the whole look, because they're looking because they're like, we need it. You're gonna die if you don't like get his body and the Katra and have that, to lay him to rest. So that's like, okay, we have to look for it, because otherwise we're going to lose McCoy too. So
yeah, exactly. And obviously the big thing that happened in the film was the destruction of the Enterprise, which is the first time we actually see it being destroyed, which is actually quite a common thing to happen in the films. Quite a common thing. It's happened a few times. So we get to see the destruction of the Enterprise played out for the first time. I mean, granted, it was used as a bluff in the original series in an episode called let that be your last battlefield in the third season. Which is actually a pretty good episode. One of the very few good ones from season 3 of the original series. Used as a bluff by Kirk to, like, I'll destroy the ship. And I was like, yeah. And he did, and he was going to, but and waited to the last second to cancel it. But this time they went full on board with it and destroyed it and stuff like that. Crashed on the surface of the Genesis planet. But I do like the scene.
I like the scene where they get to where once, you know, Spock is back and they perform the ceremony, and that the way they get him to remember all of them is that it's like, he used to call me Jim. And then somehow that's like the thing that washes over him, like, yes. Like, that's right. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it's like, your name is Jim. Yeah. But I do like, there was a couple other scenes in that, like, you know, when the Enterprise is destroyed and is careening towards, like, the debris careening towards the Genesis planet, Kirk goes to Bones, goes like, my God, Bones, what have I done? And Bones goes, what you had to do, what you always do. Turn death into a fighting chance to live. But, you know, and then it was before Spock spoke, Sarek goes to Kirk and goes like, what you have done is something like, you saved my son here and stuff like that, you know. But at what cost? Your ship, your son, and you know, David Marcus's death is pretty shocking still today, to this day.
Yeah.
Being brutally murdered by the Klingons, but Kirk goes, if I hadn't tried, the cost would have been my very soul. So, and I love that the way Sarek and Kirk kind of reconcile that whole situation earlier, you know, because he comes to Kirk pretty much pissed off at him in his own Vulcan demeanor, but he's like pissed off. It's like, why did you do that? Why did you leave him on the Genesis planet? He was supposed to, you know. It's like, so this movie is good. I enjoy it. So okay, he's into Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, and the one with the whales, otherwise known as the one with the whales.
Yep.
So
the one with the whales.
Yeah, the one with the whales is funny still to this day. They like you very much. They like you very much, but they are not the hell you're the whales. Oh, I suppose they told you that, huh? The hell they did.
Yeah.
Because Spock fails miserably at swearing.
Mm-hmm. I really like it's in my top 5.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, this is the one with the whales and stuff like that, and you know, it's just funny that Spock swears, but he's really bad at it. It's just
if you think about it, swearing in itself is such an emotional response, and it's something that conveys a very heavy.
Yeah.
It can be a happy thing, it can be a mad thing, but it's a very streamlined way of showing really like basic emotions. So I can imagine a Vulcan trying to swear, it would just come off as matter of fact, you know. It's hard to be like, what are you trying to convey? Are you saying you're really excited? Like, I'm freaking excited. Like, you know, a Vulcan saying that would just be meaningless, really. 'Cause it's like, I'm not trying to overplay or over emotionalize what I'm saying here. So using it would be weird. So it plays in perfectly to that humor of like, of course he can't swear because it just would read weird because he's not supposed to really delve into that. Like, he's not trying to express more than what he's trying to convey.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, but you know, at one point they were actually gonna make a complete farce and have Eddie Murphy as the scientist and stuff like that, wacky professor. Yep. And at one point they wanted the bird of prey to land on the Super Bowl. So, oh good God, that would have been. I mean, if Star Trek 4 had gone the way they had planned, which was to have Eddie Murphy, who was a big star at the time, he was an up and rising star in Hollywood, and have the bird of prey, you know, land on the Super Bowl. That would have been so funny. So that was one at one point they wanted to have Eddie Murphy. Unfortunately, he declined and did something else, which later he said it wasn't. Later he said he regretted. So it would have been interesting to see. I mean, it would have been interesting to have that, you know. So, but then
I just like that that they don't overdo the humor, that it makes it like cringy, you know, like I don't know, like the way that the humor is in that, it was refreshing, and it's still like they're still really passionate characters who are staying true to themselves in the movies.
Yes.
So I really liked it. I'm like, it was a nice, refreshing way. Like when I saw that movie as a kid, I really liked it because just being a kid and you can sense the humor and the joy, but also like you still see them as these respectable characters that you're like, yeah, this is an important story. They're doing something important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, it was great to see that. You know. Yeah, so it's in my top 5 too. It is definitely in my top 5. Star Trek 4. I mean, I just want to mention this, you know, before I move on, is that my dad actually doesn't like this movie, and he never told me why. I mean, he's explained to me why, but I've forgotten why he doesn't like this movie. So I'm sorry, Dad, but I like this movie, and I know you don't.
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. I know. But
just
speaking of
star review on this episode.
Oh God!
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, seriously. All right, moving on, because actually this is my dad's favorite movie, and this is actually in my top 5 myself. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
Not so fun fact. I've only seen this movie once.
Okay.
And it was when I was like 10, so I've never watched it again. So it unfortunately doesn't fall into any of my top 5. I mean, I've watched it and I'm like, yep, like I know the synopsis, but I need to rewatch it now as an adult. And
yeah.
Feel about it.
Yeah, I felt the same way as you, Mackenzie, when I was your age. When I was about that age, 10 years old, and I thought this was horrible. But then I watched it as an adult, and I enjoy it. So
yeah, I think it needs to be rewatched for sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good moments in it. This is the one with my like a few of my people call it The Search for God, rather than The Final Frontier. That's what it should have been called.
Yeah,
The Search for God. It's pretty much what it is. And I mean, there's some good moments in there. First of all, I mean, I've always wanted to go to El Capitan in Yosemite National Park because of this movie, and I haven't gotten a chance to. And that's why I kind of like I would have to go to visit El Capitan because of this movie. Because I thought, I mean, the beginning part of the movie is great, you know, with Kirk climbing up that mountain and then falling, because Spock distracts him. And you know, it's like, you know, I think this film has a lot of good qualities to it that a lot of people just dismiss out of hand because it's bad. I mean, especially, I mean, the bad part is that definitely the visual effects are really, really crappy. Because it was cheaply made. But there are some great character moments especially between Kirk, Bones, and Spock in that film. I mean, that's why I enjoyed the film very much, is because they actually grew more together as like a brotherhood, in my opinion. So more that was so central to the original series was the triumvirate, which I hope it will be in Strange New Worlds, just to be a little back with Pike, Spock, number 1. I would think the same thing will happen with this thing was more strengthened a little bit between Kirk, Spock, and Bones. You know, those things, you know, and I hope that, you know, that is very much strengthened in Star Trek V. Granted, the production was full of problems. I mean, it was produced during the writers' strike of '88, which unfortunately affected the Next Generation more than the Final Frontier. I mean, it's just, I mean, the visual effects are crap, but I still enjoyed the film for its characters.
Graphics are just graphics. I'm like that with video games too. I'm like, I don't care about if as long as the storyline's good or I can appreciate the storyline, I don't care about what the
that's how I feel about
effects are gonna be.
That's how I feel about the Final Frontier. Is because of that. Granted, the visual effects are crap, but the story is still good. I think the story is still good today. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen Cyborg since, but I mean, I kind of hope that we saw him in Discovery, because he was around at that time. Come on,
Mm-hmm.
you don't mention him.
I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled him back in. I would hope so, and that's what makes me want to rewatch it because I feel like, I mean, just even looking at something like Picard and then like Nemesis, given such a bad, I mean,
Hmm.
I Nemesis kind of sucks. So,
Yeah,
but it's like watching it, when Picard first started, and I'm like, this is a lot of like Nemesis stuff going on, like, and then having to like explain that because like I was watching it at the time with my boyfriend, and then like having to be like, okay, so this is really relying on some backstory that's happened in a Next Generation movie as well as a couple episodes,
yeah,
like this is like from the doctor to that is dealing with all the android stuff to
yeah,
but it's just like where they've done some like definitely some nodding back to movies, especially ones that are a little less praised. So
yeah,
I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if they will draw from some of the original series movies throughout Discovery to be like, all right, let's bring him back, like let's do
yeah,
it, and people would be like, oh, cool.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so definitely, because I know like people who discovered the franchise through other film, like the Kelvin timeline films. They've discovered the other shows, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah, so all right, moving on. Star Trek Six: The Undiscovered Country. This is the one
one
where
I haven't seen.
the one you haven't seen. Oh my gosh.
Right?
Okay.
I know. I've never actually watched it. I have not seen it. I don't know
Oh,
why I've never watched it, but I
it
have
is.
never.
It's a little dated, just a little bit, in terms of what the story is about. Like there's a collapse of the Soviet Union, that kind of thing. But it's a little bit dated because I mean, I was born about a month after the Berlin Wall came down. So I mean, the Berlin Wall was coming down as I was born. So it's a little bit dated in terms of that aspect, but the rest of it's great. You know, so it's pretty much the wall comes down in outer space, pretty much, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much what it is. And wow, I have never. Wow, you have never seen Star
Yeah.
Trek Six.
That is my big drop for the movies. Is not so fun fact. I have never seen Undiscovered Country.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah, definitely, definitely. It was produced really, really
Especially like it
fast.
feels weird because it's like it's the last one, like really including that final appearance of all the original series. Besides, I mean, like before like starting to pass it off to in generations. So
Hmm.
it does feel a little like where I'm like I feel like I need to see it just to be like that's the one like final one with all the original series together. Like I need to do it.
Yep, and it's very great all the way through. I mean I enjoyed the film, so it's in my top 10 at least. So it's a good movie. I'm just surprised
Top
you've never seen it.
13. It's in my top 13.
Yeah, because you've never seen it. You're at the bottom because you've never seen it. So,
Yep,
but
it's my 13.
you've never seen it. That's fine. I mean, if you ever get a chance to, it's great. I
I know
mean,
the plot of it. Like,
yeah,
I know like about what it's
yeah,
about. So I just need to
yeah,
actually see it. So
yeah. It's pretty good. I like it. I mean, it's a good film. All right, Star Trek Generations, number 7. This is actually the first Star Trek film I actually saw in theaters. So, I mean,
oh
yeah, this was actually the first movie I actually saw in a theater. I think was Generations. So, yeah, this was one with Malcolm McDowell and killing James T. Kirk.
yeah, like it's a wild story.
It's really crazy that the fun
I
fact
would
is,
love the I love the poster art for this one. I
yeah,
wanted to have I'm like if I ever got a tattoo related to Star Trek, I always loved just like that shot. Like it's a theatrical poster with like Kirk's face, like a
oh,
like a side profile of Kirk's face and then Picard's face,
yeah,
and then they're shooting between them, and I'm like, oh, so cool. And it's kind of loosely making the symbol. Like I'm like, it's so cool looking.
You know, the fun fact is that Malcolm McDowell is the uncle of Alexander Siddig, who played Dr. Bashir in DS9. So.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I think he's like his maternal uncle.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, a little small fact about that. You know, it's really this is an okay film. You know, it's got humor a lot, especially with Data drinking that drink.
Yeah.
And I hate this.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, that gets me laughing every time. You know, it's so funny. All right, yeah. So I enjoy it. The film's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it's clunky in parts, but also there's a lot of fun stuff too. So
Big transitional.
yeah,
It's definitely
and the
one of
destruction of the Enterprise again.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like another one.
Yeah, this one was the D.
Military spending must be wild for. The
Yeah,
Federation.
yeah, exactly. Must be crazy, you know, especially with
Like,
the.
you destroyed it again. Like neither of you guys could be captain at this point. I'm getting tired of you guys destroying the Enterprise now twice. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's like, come on, seriously. I get it. Yeah, totally. It's like, come on. You destroy the Enterprise again. I guess the reason why was because I guess ILM really hated filming that model. So it was very clunky. I guess on the
destroy it.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the visual effects artists on both the television series and ILM hated filming that model. So that's why I've heard. That could be totally wrong, but that's probably why they destroyed it, was because it was so clunky. So.
Yeah.
All right, Star Trek: First Contact.
That's my favorite top movie.
Yeah, I liked First Contact too, especially like.
Definitely my favorite. Like, it was one of the first Star Trek movies I had actually seen.
Yep.
It was like on, like, just being able to go see that. Like, I like seeing it on. I saw it with my dad just at home. Like, we'd gotten it, like rented it and watched it, and
Yeah.
I thought it was so good because I'd seen Next Generation on and everything, so I knew the characters. But then it just was really exciting to hear, like, this is a story about like how Star Trek started, like how we got to this point, like in the future, like meeting and making contact with aliens and being invited to the Federation. And I'm like, that is so exciting. So I always loved that story. And then also just exploring Zephyr Cochrane and, like, never meet your heroes type of people, where it's like, ooh, like, you're not that cool of a guy, huh? Like, but your intentions weren't in the right place, but you made an important impact on humanity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I mean, I love when Lily Sloan is seen for the first time, and she starts shooting at Picard and Data, and Picard goes, "Hold your fire! We're here to help you!" And she yells, "Boop! Crap!"
Yeah. I love it so much.
Yeah, it was just, oh man, I love that, I love
her whole character in that movie is amazing too.
Yeah, she's
you're rightfully scared. Like, I mean, like, when you're dealing with this whole thing of like first contact, of being like afraid of like what's out there, the unknown, and you have people from the future showing up, and you're trying not to mess with the Prime Directive and the timeline and like everything weird that's going on. And this lady's just like, I need to know what the heck is going on right now. Like, quit leaving me out of the loop here, boys. Like, I'm getting annoyed. Like,
yeah,
she's just trying to protect herself and things going on, being like, hey, I'm freaked out, rightfully so. Let me remind you. So please don't keep me in the dark about what's going on right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's definitely a film that's accessible to non-fans too, because of that.
Yeah.
Get to see Star Trek being born, that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, that's like also my favorite movie to show people if they want to like have an intro to Star Trek without trying to watch series and cherry pick episodes. It's First Contact, because it's like, well, here's how it started. You can get a good idea of what it's built off of and the things they're scared of and why the Federation exists and everything. Why is space exploration important in the future?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think that the design aesthetic after when Next Generation, the 24th century shows were over. That's because of Picard being in the past. The reason why you got all the design aesthetics in Enterprise, Discovery, and Strange New Worlds and stuff like that is because of that. So
yeah,
which is kind of like an unintended side effect of him being there, but
yeah, but it's a cool way to also like tie together like aesthetics of like development, and I think it's a cool way to do it. I love when movies do stuff like that retroactively, to be like they did that a little bit like in trying to show stuff like that with Star Wars, even just trying to find ways to like through development better give explanation of why things are designed differently in similar time periods of like where the movies fall. So I like that.
Yeah, I do too. All right. Star Trek Insurrection. Now this is one I know that most fans either love or hate it.
I love it.
I love it too. I love it too. I mean, I love the ending, especially when Data's in that pile of whatever it is, like weeds or something like that. He pops his head out, and Crusher goes, "Data, it's time to go." He turns to the kid and says, "I have to go home now." I remember that so well because when I saw this movie in the theater, I remember saw this one in the theater. I remember that got a huge laugh from the audience. That scene was like it caused everyone to laugh. Yeah, I think it's a fun movie. People think it's crap because it's like if you're calling it a glorified 2-part episode of Star Trek, you're pretty much saying it's awesome. Yeah, in my opinion,
I'm like, dude, 2-part. Every time someone tries to use that as like a means to like downplay it, I'm like, 2-part episodes of Star Trek are iconic, first of all. So that to me is a compliment. Like, I'm like, good. I hope it feels like a 2-part episode because that means that it's really well fleshed out and it's gonna have an amazing resolution. So I'm like, I really like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel too. And I mean, this is more reminiscent of an episode of Next Generation. What is it called? Who Watches the Watchers? With the Mintakans. So I thought the same thing. I mean, I enjoyed that episode too, but I also enjoy Insurrection too. I mean, but there are people who just absolutely hate it. I know. Yeah. I know.
I really liked Insurrection. That was the one that I've probably seen the most of the Star Trek movies, besides like from the Kelvin timeline, like them just being around because of recent years. But it's like that Insurrection is the one that we tend to watch a lot in our household. So
yeah, and I enjoy Insurrection too because of that. Because it was very humor. Granted, the villains are granted F. Murray Abraham as the villain, real awful. I love F. Murray Abraham. I think he's a great actor. I mean, he's been in other films like Amadeus and stuff like that. That big movie about Mozart. But yeah, he was in that movie and stuff like that. And I like him as an actor. But I think he said once if he could play Star Trek the rest of his life, he would. So he did say that at one point when he was making Insurrection. He did say that if I could play Star Trek whenever I could, I would. So or something like that. If he could play Star Trek the rest of his life, he could. But I think his character is very one-dimensional. So unfortunately, it's a one-dimensional villain. I mean,
because it just seems like it's like truly like nefarious. Like I like when villains feel like there's like a reasoning behind them being nefarious.
Yeah,
and, where you can almost be like Khan. I like as a villain, like one of my favorite like Star Trek villains, because you understand why he's angry, and you can be like, I can see why you're a little upset and why you feel like you don't like the Federation for what's been dealt to you, but also given who you are, like, but it's like, it's weird when they're just like, ha, like, I'm going to do this for my own like reasoning. And it's like, I don't get what your motive is. So I just hope you get quelled at some point.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about some of the villains in the films, is because they're one-dimensional. And that's how I feel about Ruffalo. I feel that way about Soren from Generations. I also feel that way about Kruge from The Search for Spock. I think they're very one-dimensional villains, that kind of thing. Speaking of villains, let's move on to the 10th film, Nemesis. This is one is actually on the bottom of my list, towards the bottom of my list, because it was billed as a generation's final journey, and they didn't deliver on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because that's how I feel about it. I mean, the story is okay, the visual effects are okay. It's just when you bill Nemesis as the final next generation film and you don't deliver on it, that's when it's disappointing. It was a big letdown for that. I mean, granted,
real nice. And then around the same time was when Enterprise was going to be getting canceled too.
Yeah. I mean, there were rumors about it being canceled, getting canceled itself. But, I mean, Enterprise was tanking in the ratings at the time when Nemesis came out. So it was like, but it also had stiff competition that winter too. I mean, it didn't do very well at the box office. It's the lowest grossed Star Trek film, other than The Final Frontier. But those is because it was on competition with like Harry Potter and James Bond that was out that winter time, and also Lord of the Rings. So
two towers, right?
Yeah, three bigger blockbusters than Nemesis was. But I remember this one video I watched about Nemesis once, and this person had mentioned a different reviewer, and he said the following: if you view Nemesis as another Star Trek movie, just another Star Trek movie, it's a great movie. But if you view it as the final Next Generation movie, it is a letdown. And that's how I viewed Nemesis, unfortunately, is the last Next Generation film, which unfortunately is a letdown. Because other than the death of Data and the wedding of Troy and Riker, which was gonna it was expected to happen anyway. It was like, it's very much a letdown, in my opinion. It's very much a big letdown because of that. Like, Shinzon is a very one-dimensional, revenge-driven villain. It's unfortunate that revenge of these villains has become a recurring theme in the Star Trek films.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Khan, we have like I want to say Cybok was a vengeful character. No, but he was cast out from Vulcan society for his emotions. And then you got Chang, who was like a conspirator to keep the war going with the Federation. You got Soren, who needed revenge because he wanted to get back to his family in the Nexus, and he tried to kill a bunch of people in order to make that happen. You got the Borg Queen in First Contact, which is a great villain.
Yeah, I really like her too.
Yeah, and then you got Ruffalo in Insurrection, who is very revengeful because he is the same race as the people on the planet who were exiled. So, in trying to kill off the parents, so to speak, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now you got Shinzon, who is also a very vengeful character because he is supposed to be a clone of Picard, but then you got this like other vengeful things because he just wants to kill him so he can survive and kill everybody else.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he causes the death of Data, but because Data sacrifices his life to save the Enterprise. So,
but it was just like when I first watched Picard, I didn't know where that was going to be going.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about what was happening, and when they started kind of delving into it, it's like, oh, there's a lot of stuff from Nemesis being brought in.
Yep.
From this, like, we were just like reflecting on that, which I think was great considering how it did kind of flop. Like, that they really tried to be like, but this is a really important point in the Next Generation Historia of like things that happened, the events that took place in that movie, and we're just kind of left at that. I think it needed to be explored more, and that's why I really appreciated that Picard at least tried to kind of
tie it together. Yeah, the
pull a
Nemesis.
phoenix and raise some of the ashes of that, and like move
Hmm.
forward with that story a bit of like the repercussions of the events of that movie. So I'm
Yep.
like, you don't need to watch Nemesis, but you can kind of figure out what happened based on watching Picard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. And now we're back. Now we're in the Kelvin timeline films, and now we got the Star Trek 2009, otherwise known as the Star Trek. I call it Star Trek
That's
2000.
that's my second favorite movie behind First Contact.
Yeah, I like the first Kelvin timeline film. This is one where they travel back in time and all due to a supernova, which is also mentioned in Picard. The supernova of the Romulan sun.
Yep.
Destroys Nemesis, destroys Romulus, and stuff like that. Millions of people displaced, and it's part of one of the themes of Picard season 1 was that, and stuff like that. So, and then it's Nero and Spock travel back in time, and Nero destroys the USS Kelvin and kills James Kirk's dad just as he is born. So that's what diverges the timeline. Right then and there, and that kind of thing. And it's a good film all the way through. It's action heavy, obviously, because they try to make it like a Star Trek, Star Wars movie kind of thing, like a Star Trek movie with Star Wars vibes, which is I think it's pretty.
It was just really exciting, I think, because like it's just seeing like a sort of a resurgence of Star Trek, like the beginning of it started getting really popular again. And then just that it was such a well done movie. Like J.J. Abrams already had such a great discography of like his work.
Yep.
That seeing like I loved Fringe and I loved Lost, and so I was really excited to see him directing this movie, and then in the style that I expect from him, and then just the revamping of the original series timeline. And so it was a great way to get a bunch of my friends. Like, I don't know, it's one of those things where I'm like, I would almost feel like I was a proselytizer of Star Trek, and having a chance for my friends to see it in this light and think it's actually cool was really exciting for me, because most people they knew I liked Star Trek, and they were like, yeah, but Star Trek kind of was like meh, and I'm like, whatever, guys. And then when those movies came out, so many people were like, you know what, Star Trek's actually really cool, and I regret saying that I didn't like it, and I'm like, yes. I was able to have so many friends convert over to being Star Trek fans because of those movies.
Yeah, and like I said, I have a friend on social media. His name is Jonathan. He is a Star Wars podcaster, and when he and I talked about Star Trek and Star Wars, he said that he has started watching Star Trek because he had seen the movie, the Kelvin timeline films, and went back to watching the original series and Next Generation. Yeah. So, and so like that. So to get more of like, okay, what's this Star Trek all about? Here we go. And I remember talking to him about that. Like this was like a thing I did like 4 years ago. So I just remember that so well from that conversation. It's because people who got into Star Trek now is because of those films. Yeah. So I applaud Abrams for that and stuff like that, for bringing Star Trek more to a mainstream kind of audience. I mean, granted, it was kind of like a cult audience before. Now it's more of a mainstream audience because of those films. Yeah. So yeah, I saw the movie so many times in the theater. I think I saw it like 5 times. And I enjoyed it every time. It got better every time you watched it.
Probably the most that I did the same thing. Like I think I go to the movies, and I'll usually go like once for a movie, but I went to that movie a bunch because I went with my dad, I went with boyfriend at the time, and then I brought some friends to go, and then I went another time with another friend, and I just kept going to that movie being like, well, let's go, I'll show you, like I'm so excited. Like
yeah,
it was just like a nice way to like get a bunch of people into Star Trek. It was just exciting just to be like, I love Star Trek, and here is a great movie which I being a Star Trek fan, really appreciate these movies. So
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I think I saw it like 5 times, and I enjoyed it every time. So, and that brings up that's a good bet. I mean, that just brings it to staying power. I mean, the movie's now 12 years old, but it's still a good movie even today.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Next to last movie, Into Darkness. I know you said this is your favorite. So
it's one of my favorites too. It's like so it sits there at my top 3, like my third with Wrath of Khan. Like Wrath of Khan and Into Darkness both sit there because I love the whole story arc that starts with Wrath of Khan, and like pretty much my other like 2 next movies, it's based around like just trying to like fit in Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Wrath of Khan. Like that whole story arc is just great. But I like Into Darkness a lot because I love seeing that mirrored sort of parallel universe of, look, here's a villain that exists in both timelines, in like these like parallel timelines. Now, like, how does that play out? It plays out pretty similarly because the vengefulness is still the same. It's still there. He's been a pocket in time. Like, he doesn't know about the like, it doesn't affect how he's going to play out his vengeance, like with the alternate timeline. So how does that play out now with a very different dynamic with Spock and Kirk, and differences in how they are as people in the alternate timeline? And I really liked how they mirrored which some people, or mirrored Wrath of Khan, which some people criticize it for being lazy and revamping an already existing story, but I really liked it. An alternate timeline of it.
Yeah. Into Darkness is actually in the middle of my list because of that feeling. It's like Wrath of Khan, and it's okay. I mean, there are some great aspects of it. I mean, I think personally, this is like spacey on steroids. So, because it takes place before the Wrath of Khan took place, in the prime timeline. So I think it's like spacey on steroids. Because I remember, like, I took my mom to see this movie too. I think it was like around the same time of like Mother's Day and stuff like that. I remember taking the first cut one time my movie as my Mother's Day present for my mother. And that was my freshman year of college. Actually, I got done my first freshman year of college when that movie came out. So, but this was like a few years later, and I'm like, took my mom out to see this movie, and I think I remember telling her. I think I remember afterward. I remember telling my mom, I think this is like Space Seed on steroids. So, because it's full of action, obviously, and I liked the whole thing. I mean, I like certain aspects of it, stuff like that. I mean, I think the Black Starship is cool. The USS Vengeance, ironically, but it was never. It was mentioned once. The name of the ship only once. But and I do like Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Khan. Yeah. But the one thing I really wish they had done is if they had been more forthcoming. Like Abrams and Kurtzman and Orsi, if they had been a little bit more open-minded, I mean, let them know, like, okay, you're teasing us here with this. Is this Khan? And they won't tell you the answer, but
I kind of figured it was. It was one of those things. Like as it came out, I'm like, it has to be. There's no way this guy is not, like, considering just like what it's hinting at and where we're at now after things have settled with the alternate line. I'm like, that's got to be Khan.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I wish they were more forthcoming, and that's how I feel about, like, back then. And I still feel that now, 8 years later, when the movie's been out for 8 years. But that's how I feel about that film, is because if they had been more forthcoming about, okay, we're gonna do Khan, please stop harassing us. It's just like, I wish they were just more forthcoming, and that's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And I mean, but Into Darkness is the biggest grossing film of the franchise. So, and I still firmly believe that we didn't have Into Darkness making like $400+ million at the box office, we probably wouldn't have gotten this explosion of the Star Trek universe on Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
So I really think we wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, because it was like 2 years later we got the announcement about the new Star Trek show, and we didn't know it was going to be Discovery at the moment, but we got that and stuff like that. That was 2 years later, so stuff like that. So okay, and now Beyond. This is my favorite Star Trek film. This is in my top 3. I mean, this is
movie too. That's another one that I struggle with because I also love that movie, and I'm like, that's like right there alongside Wrath of Khan and Into Darkness.
Yeah, I mean, I love Beyond because it felt like, to me, an episode of the original series. Mm-hmm. I mean, like the first 2 seasons of the original series. You know, that's how it felt like to me, and I enjoy this movie. I mean, I love it through and through. But you know, you got another one-dimensional villain, unfortunately, and Crawl, played by Idris Elba. But but it's a great story. It's a great movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got a lot of fun things about it. A lot of Easter eggs. You know, like Enterprise is mentioned a few times. The XO1 era and stuff like that. And actually, it was actually in all 3 Kelvin timeline films is the XO1 era. You got a model of it on Admiral Marcus's desk in Into Darkness. You got Scotty mentioning Admiral Archer in the first one because he tested out the transporter technology on his Beagle. I'll let you know when it reappears.
I love when they reference that. I'm like, hey, it's Archer's Beagle. Like,
yeah, it's like, I know that dog. Where is it? Is it? I'll let you know when it reappears. But this one has like a lot of banter between Spock and McCoy, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah. I definitely. I like the way that they develop each of the characters kind of into like sort of like resolving the timeline a bit of like, so Kirk ends up being the captain he chooses to be, like being like, I actually am gonna stay captain, and Spock decides to stay in command, like where he's at, and you know, everyone stays together after all of the events of like the past 2 movies and all the plot that has happened in the alternate timeline.
Yep.
It somehow ends up being that they're still going to be the best trio of friends.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, and, you know, that whole thing with, I think they handled the death of Leonard Nimoy very, very, very well in that movie.
Yeah.
Especially at the end where Spock is opening up that little chest thing or whatever it is, and he pulls out that little thing, he opens it up, and it's a picture of him and of Spock Prime's crew. Mm-hmm. That when I first saw that for the first time, I actually got a little teary-eyed because I was like,
yeah,
I thought like, oh man, this is a great tribute to Mr. Nimoy. This is a great tribute. That was great.
I know, it's so good.
I liked that. I mean, I did enjoy it, and from what I understand, before he died, they were actually asking him to return for Beyond, and he had to say no. So
yeah,
it was just kind of sad, and he died a few months later when they were doing pre-production on Beyond, and they asked him to return, and he said no. So, and he died a few months later. But I mean, I enjoyed Beyond, and I'm curious to know what's going to happen after that. You know, yeah. If they make it, here's what I think: they're going to have to acknowledge Anton Yelchin being gone somehow.
Yeah,
because he died about a month before the movie came out, which is unfortunate. Yeah. It's really tragic how he died.
I know, that still like haunts me, like hearing about that. Like, what a tragic accident.
Yeah, exactly. So he dies about a month before the movie comes out, and I don't know how they're gonna if they make another Kelvin timeline film, how are you gonna address the absence of Chekhov? I mean, granted, you could in the storyline, he could be on a different ship or something like that. He transferred off the Enterprise, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, you can easily explain it, but here's who I think who should be the next navigator of that enterprise? A woman in a hijab.
Yeah.
Yeah, because with the reason why I say that is because of the anti-Muslim sentiment of the America after 9/11, that kind of thing. You got Farhan Tahrir, who played the Kelvin captain in the first Kelvin timeline film. He dies viciously by Nero, but he's Pakistani. So
it'd be a good nod to why we had him in the first place, like with the Cold War, and having that, like that's a big part of that, like why Gene Roddenberry assembled the crew the way he did in the first place.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like, people being like, Star Trek isn't political. I'm like, it is. It's a nod to current events and how we as people navigate those.
Yes.
Like, literally why the crew is the way it is in the original series is it's a reflection of the world at that time. Despite it being taking place in the future, there's a reason why we have Sulu. There's a reason why we have Uhura. Like, they all are part of, and like Chekhov is like a big thing too, just because it's like, look at all of these people from the Earth, from different countries that we have had previous altercations with in our history.
Yeah,
here they all are working together, not blinking an eye. It's possible.
That's what I feel. I think the next navigator of the Enterprise should be a woman in a hijab. Because of the, like I said, the anti-Muslim sentiment that's been in America ever since 9/11, it would show the audience that, hey, we got a diverse crew on this ship in the future. We have a.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I've mentioned this many different times on social media that you should put a woman in a hijab as the next navigator of that enterprise because of that. And people go like, they don't have religion on Star Trek. What the heck? Well, hello, you got the Bajorans. Hello.
The Bajorans are literally, like
they're talking about religion on Star Trek without being like flat out preachy. So it
doesn't have to be about, like, it could be like whole species that they have one religion, like the Bajorans. That's like a big deal. Like, that's just how their entire like race is. But then it's like in America, it's like America versus the rest of the world type of thing, like Earth's like divergent cultures.
Yeah.
And that they address those, where it's like not every alien race is going to have a unified culture. Like Earth is a perfect example of that. But
exactly.
They can embrace that in the future and still come together with other planets and other races and species of aliens.
Yes, that's how I feel about that. That's how I honestly feel about this woman in a hijab. This could be a different planet altogether who embraces Muslim culture. Muslim culture. So that's why I would justify it as, here's the woman in the hijab from this X planet who has a culture that has similar to the old Muslim world of old Earth, like that kind of thing. So that's how you could justify it in Star Trek, is that. So
yeah.
So that's how I justify it as. So, but I think the future is very bright for Star Trek films. Like, we got the recent announcement that we're going to get a new Star Trek film in 2023. I'm curious to see what's going to happen from there. So.
Yeah, all right. To see where things go, and new movies and new
TV,
new content that will end up becoming movies. I'm excited.
Yeah, and speaking of like other ideas for film projects for Star Trek, why don't you have? Because I know Netflix does it, Hulu does it, Amazon Prime does it, HBO Max does it too. I think original films.
Yep.
Produced solely for that.
Probably start looking.
Oh yeah.
Start looking at that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if a Discovery movie happens at some point, or like start looking into that.
Yeah, because because I know Netflix does it, Hulu does it, Amazon Prime does it. Those original films for the theater or on their streaming service. And that's how I honestly feel like, certain things about Star Trek could be utilized for Paramount Plus, like a complete remastering of DS9 and Voyager into HD, because, with the Voyager documentary surpassing all the goals that they had, that they had set, it's like insane, you have an HD footage like they did for What We Left Behind, which is the DS9 documentary. If Paramount Plus would like come out and say like, okay, we're going to remaster these shows, we'll pony up the bill. We might have you pay a little bit extra, to do it. But I'm sure if they were about Paramount Plus, if they would remaster both Voyager and Deep Space Nine to HD for a Paramount Plus only exclusive, I'm sure that would get a lot of fans enticed. So, but it's exciting. Like I said before, it's an exciting time to be a Star Trek fan. So, a lot of new content. So. All right, so we should wrap this one up. Any further thoughts or comments?
Can you list your top 5?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can do that. Wrath of Khan, number 1. Final Frontier, 09, Beyond, and Star Trek 3, Search for Spock.
Nice.
Well, okay, why don't you rank your 5?
Yeah, mine is First Contact, Star Trek 2009. It's between Wrath of Khan and Into Darkness for my 3rd. For the 4th, it's between Search for Spock and Voyage Home, and then Insurrection.
Good choices. All right.
Gotta ask everyone else to list their top 5. I want to know people's top 5s.
I do too. So yeah. So if you wish to let us know about your top 5 Star Trek films, feel free to send us an email at tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com or comment on the Instagram post of the episode or on the Facebook post of the episode or on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, let's see what our listeners' favorite ones are. I'm interested to see if there's a trend on what the top 5 are. Yeah, because I know
Wrath of Khan is usually on the top list. Usually. Yeah. So, and I know that one's got all a bunch of parodies. Especially on this, like on Seinfeld,
Mm-hmm.
you ever, God! All right. So until next time, take care and live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.